Happy Friday, everyone. We have made it through the week. Congratulations. Lots of craziness happening in the news cycle this week, of course, especially as we inch closer and closer to Election Day. But we're going to talk our way through all of the craziness. I've got a great lineup for you. Congressman Tim Burchett will be joining me in just a few moments to talk about how the Biden-Harris regime allowed someone who literally is in cahoots with the Taliban into our country with a special visa. And he's living amongst us, apparently, and maybe possibly North Carolina, or maybe he's left. We don't know. But he's going to be joining us in just a few minutes to tell us what he's hearing. We're also going to be talking to our A-list panel today. No one seems to like Kamala Harris, and I told you just that. So I'll be joined by the lectern guy, as well as our good friend over at InfoWars, Mr. Harrison Smith. He'll be joining me in just a few moments. And on top of it all, folks, in Texas, there's a lot of issues with illegals having IDs and trying to vote in their upcoming election. Ken Paxton's going to be weighing in on all of this. I'll be joined by Texas Scorecard's Brandon Waltons in just a few moments, who's going to be breaking down the latest fight in Texas to make sure our elections are safe and secure. So as you could assume, we've got a jam-packed program for you, so don't let me hold you up. Let's dive into it. All right, I keep telling you how unlikable Kamala Harris is, and well, Democrats are obviously catching on these days. The New York Post pretty much slam dunking on Kamala. Now, so many of us really have known this for a very long time, especially when you watched her in the primaries in 2020. Oh, it was an absolute disaster. But of course, Democrats needed to put up one of their dumbest candidates so they could use her as a little pawn. And so that's the reason why Kamala Harris was selected and not elected to be the top of the ticket. But not everyone's loving it. Obviously, Barack Obama is catching on and really just realizing what we all knew and that she's unlikable. And he's worried. And you know what happens when Democrats get a little nervous? They go out there and they try to shame you into not voting for Donald Trump. And well, that's what Barack Obama is doing to Black Americans. Take a listen.
We have not yet seen the same kinds of energy and turnout in all quarters of our neighborhoods and communities as we saw when I was running. Now, I also want to say that that seems to be more pronounced with the brothers. So if you don't mind, just for a second, I'm going to speak to y'all directly and say that when you have a choice that is this clear, when on the one hand you have somebody who grew up like you, knows you, went to college with you, understands the struggles and pain and joy that comes from those experiences. He's had to work harder and do more and overcome.
Guilt shaming, especially Black men. I think this is pretty funny these days because white men were shamed for voting for President Trump, obviously calling them racist, and now Black men are getting that same treatment. Kind of sounds like equity in a way, very, very interesting way. Now, let's take a look at this. Kamala Harris getting the cover of Vogue. It was really hard for me to look at first because I thought this was AI, but apparently it's not. Massive amount of Photoshop because you got to make her look young and alive. And there's a lot of fixes that need to be made. So, not really the best cover of Vogue, of course, but they still put this out there for some reason. So joining me to discuss is my A-list panel. Please welcome in a lectern guy. As many of you guys know, Adam is joining us again today. We're also joined by Harrison Smith, one of the great hosts over at InfoWars. He's the host of the American Journal, and he's joining us now. Thank you guys for joining us. Adam, you are in your car. Interesting story. You stayed in Florida. You know, we're dealing with a Hurricane Milton. And you were really on the rough side of all of this. So thank you for joining us. We hope all is okay. I want you to weigh in on all of this first. What's your takeaway on all of this? Because they're trying to guilt now Black men into voting for Kamala Harris.
I mean, it's obvious that Kamala is completely unlikable. She polled horribly in the 2020 election. She went from calling Biden a racist to saying, you know what, that's the guy I want to follow behind. And we look at all the policies that have come out from Biden, and she's now trying to say, I'm not really sure if those are the policies I support, but I was definitely a part of it. Everyone knows if she could have done something to change what's happening right now, she had the power and influence to do it while she was in office. And it's catching up with her. She was a DEI hire from day one. Biden said so. And the politics that they played with their community, their voter base, is catching up, and the chickens are coming home to roost.
Yeah, and that's the key thing here, right? She had no problem accepting the job as VP because, well, Biden was just looking for any black woman to kind of fill that slot. And so now that she has to open her mouth and she's at the top of the ticket, she's really struggling to get by. But that's not really too surprising. Harrison, what do you make of all of this? Because it's interesting how this is all playing out and how those on the left are now kind of hitting the panic button on all of this.
Yeah, something obviously changed significantly, and I think you can tell what's really going on by what the enemy does. Right? They're going to Pennsylvania. They're sending Obama on, a tour through Pennsylvania to try to shore that state up. They wouldn't be doing that if they were confident in it. And of course, you referred to Kamala Harris as a black woman, which is one of the main issues. Is she? I mean, is she? That's actually an important question for the black people who are voting, at least from stuff that I've seen. And so, I'm always sort of struggling of like, what's real, what's just a hoax. Are the polls reliable? Are the videos that I'm seeing representative, or are they one-offs? I've been seeing so many videos of black people talking about leaving the Democratic Party, or even just man on the streets walking up to random black people asking them who they're voting for. So many seem to be going for Trump. Again, I never want to get like overconfident in that. I think, okay, this could just be a one-off, it could be a rare thing, but we're seeing a lot of videos of it. But the continuity I see, the one thing I see throughout is they don't like that she lied about being black, right? They refer to her as an Indian woman, and they really don't like the Venezuelans. And I think, at the end of the day, the Trump message is the American message. Nationalism is the cure for racism. And it doesn't matter if you're black or you're white, we're on the same team. And if you got somebody who is trying to get the team into first place and who supports the team and is on your team, you're going to go for that guy over the people who seem to prioritize all of the other teams over yours. So, they've made their bed, and it's time to lie in it for the Democrats.
Yeah, and you just brought up a key point too. I saw on your X page, you shared this clip of literally just random black men being asked questions if they're going to vote for Donald Trump or Kamala Harris. And so I'm going to play a brief section of that soundbite and then get your reaction on the other side of it.
About to vote?
Yeah.
Who you voting for?
Trump.
Come on, bro. Harris tells backwards, bro.
What?
Harris.
Man, we not voting for that, man. We voting for Trump, man.
And who you voting for, Trump or Kamala?
Man, Trump, we ain't that Indian ass, man.
Who, Kamala?
Yeah, we ain't
Why you don't with her?
because she with them immigrants. I'm black.
So why you ride with Trump so much?
Them Venezuelans taking all our bread.
Hey, Trump or Kamala?
Shit, Trump, to be honest.
Why Trump, though?
He used to keep immigrants out, so, we was able for us to get jobs. It's hard for us to get jobs now, shit, because immigrants taking over. And they do it better than us, though, but they taking our man.
All right, so this election around, you voting for Trump?
Hell yeah, fuck Camilla, fuck. I ain't even gonna lie. I'm not for her. Her ass Venezuelans, for them. That's over with. I don't with her.
Like, what would make you want to vote for Kamala?
I ain't gonna lie, we was the last two people on earth. Still wouldn't do that shit.
Damn.
On bro grave.
It's like that?
Yeah, it's like that.
Harrison, they're not really all on board here. That was just what you were kind of referencing. So your reaction.
Yeah, exactly. No, and that's typical of stuff that I've been seeing. And again, if you look at what the Democrats freaked out about, it's exactly those things that the guys brought up, right? We brought up the Venezuelans in Colorado. They had a conniption fit, right? You can't talk about that. It's not happening. They tried to cover it up because they know that speaks to all Americans. Doesn't matter what color you are. Or if you're talking about, the race thing. I mean, they tried to, shame Trump into dropping the fact that she became suddenly black. But I mean, that's an important point, especially for people who are motivated by identity politics. If you've got somebody masquerading as your identity to try to get your vote, it's insulting. So look at what the Democrats are desperate to try to cover up or distract from, and you'll see, what's actually a very powerful point for Trump.
Yeah, and Adam, speaking of covering up, I wanted to bring this up because obviously you are a hurricane survivor, but Kamala Harris visited North Carolina, and my sources on the ground were warning me that it was just going to be a photo opportunity for her before she even arrived, that they actually had to temporarily shut down the airspace in the area so that she could get her photo op, which means that search and rescue teams had to stop doing what they were doing so she could get her photo op. But there was an interesting clip that was played on Mr. Sean Ryan's show. It's a great podcast. I want to take a listen to that because this highlights how much of a fraud she is. Take a listen.
In that video, I started getting a lot of messages like to my Instagram from like actual like aircraft commanders, like squadron commanders.
No kidding.
I had a squadron commander from North Carolina reach out to me. They had to load a C-17 full of supplies just to take a photo op for Kamala, and they never sent the bird.
Wait a minute, what?
They loaded an entire C-17 full of supplies for the hurricane victims just for Kamala to go there, take a photo, take a video, and they never sent the C-17. It was just
Are you
full.
serious?
Yeah, that was a National Guard, North Carolina National Guard unit. That was a 06 that reached out to me. And then I had another.
He reached out to you to tell you that they did a photo op and with the intention of never sending.
Never sent
aid.
it. It was just a photo op.
Adam, that makes my blood boil. What's your thoughts on all of this?
This is absolutely disgusting. I think the most shameful thing about this is consider the video of her actually delivering supplies on the ground, helping people who need help. Isn't that the bigger win for your campaign? These people don't just tell you that they're betters, they act like it. And I think that's the most disgusting part about this whole Liberal Party these days. There was a better opportunity to be on the ground and serve people, help people who are actually hurting, who need help. And instead of spending an hour at a Salvation Army or some type of food bank passing out food, she chose to do this instead for a photo op. These people don't have your best interest in mind. I think a lot of people are feeling the same way. Harrison brought this up. I think a lot of us would be okay with your American second or third because at least we're marching towards something together. We are so far from first place at this point. We have nothing in common. And I think people miss that. People miss the idea of what it means to be an American. We actually are in this together. You take that soundbite they played everywhere during COVID. We're in this together. Where are we seeing it now? Where are we seeing it now from this Liberal Party that's running? We don't. We see we see airlines loaded up with supplies and not delivered to people who need it. Are we in this together or not?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's the part that's so infuriating. And I got to say, I was actually a little bit of a bipartisan, I guess you could say. I was a little happy when I heard Governor Ron DeSantis and Joe Biden all tag teaming to go after Kamala Harris because they were ultimately calling her out for being a fraud. Both of these individuals were pretty much saying that they were working together on the Hurricane Milton response, and they were very in sync when it came to their messages. And it was funny only because Kamala Harris was trying to politicize all of this, and Joe Biden wasn't even having it. Harrison, there's a lot of beef going on. We hear about it in these reports between Kamala Harris and Biden's camp. We've heard a couple of reports regarding maybe a physical altercation that might have taken place. I believe that was Jack Posobiec who put that out there as well. What's your takeaway from all of this? Because it seems like Joe Biden's not going to allow her to politicize all this.
Yeah, it's very weird. I mean, obviously during the debate, Donald Trump said, Joe Biden hates this woman. And frankly, he's got good reason to. I mean, she did oust him. It was very much a coup. So again, it's Biden. It's a lot of the, MSM that was previously just all in on Kamala, starting to admit some of her weaknesses. So I don't know what has changed if the polling came back in and just it's been decided Trump's going to win. So we better start, laying the groundwork for that eventuality, or whether there's unhappiness in their house, but a plague on both of their houses. I hope they destroy each other. I'm just praying for a Biden endorsement of Trump by the end of his term. I think he could do it. We got a little under a month. I think he could do it. I think he could really bring this country together, show some bipartisanship, show that we're all in this for the best for America and not just for Kamala, who is just abysmal. And the other thing is that some people, the more you learn about them, the worse they get. That's Kamala. Trump's the opposite. The less you know about Trump, the more you hate him. The more you learn about him, the more you listen to him, the more you like him. The more you study him, the more you realize what he's all about. And so I think the longer we go towards the election, the less people are going to like Kamala, the more people are going to like Trump, the more they're introduced or the more time they have to reflect on both these people.
Yeah, well, we did get Joe Biden to put on that MAGA hat. So I think it's a win already. I think it's an endorsement that we could run with at this point.
You know,
Yeah.
I was so anti-Biden for a long time. It's like he's kind of turning the leaf on me. He's putting on the Trump hat. He's being funny. He's wheeling around. Retired president is the position he was meant to fill, I think.
Oh, he's pulling the Fetterman's what he's doing. He's getting better with age.
There you go.
Yeah, when they deteriorate, they seem to get on the right side of things. It's probably because they're getting closer and closer to meeting their maker, and they have to get even out at this point and hope for the best. I don't know. I don't know.
Maybe so. Maybe so. He's had a lot of time on the beach to think about it, you know?
Yeah, the vitamin D is good for him, I guess, these days. Harrison, Adam, thank you for joining me. We had a great discussion, and I appreciate it as always. So thank you.
Thank you.
Good to see you guys.
We've told you here on this show, the government's not going to save you if there ever is a disaster or a food shortage. It is up to you at home to be prepared, and the best way to do so is with my good friends over at fuelprepper.com. Fuelprepper.com has some of the best protein products on the market when it comes to being prepared, having a food surplus ready to go. Head over there right now to fuelprepper.com because they're doing a sale, and let me tell you something, they've never gone this low with their prices. When you use promo code STOCKUP35, that's STOCKUP35, you're going to save 35%. Now, it's an incredible offer. You've got to take advantage of it right now because this is a temporary promo code. When that's over, you're going to go back to using BRIE15. So don't wait. Head on over to fuelprepper.com right now. Indulge. There's New York strip. There's ribeye. There's filet mignon. There's literally every cut of meat that you're going to want in case we have some type of natural disaster or food shortage. You got to be prepared. It's with fuelprepper.com. Use promo code STOCKUP35. Well, obviously, it is deeply concerning when we talk about how the Biden-Harris regime has just allowed all of these unvetted Afghan refugees into our country. They're handing out visas like candy, of course, and they're not really doing much to vet these individuals. We spoke about it earlier this week in regards to a man who was arrested who was looking to carry out a ISIS-style terror attack on Election Day here on U.S. soil. But it's not just him. According to the great Congressman Tim Burchett, he has actually uncovered something that is very, very interesting. He says that an individual who has close ties to the Taliban has been given visa, and he's currently in the United States. Now, interesting enough, according to him, he's saying that this individual was given this visa, and well, we're just allowing a person who has spent quality time with the Taliban, specifically training the Taliban, now into our country. And again, this raises all the red flags that for some reason DHS and Biden-Harris themselves don't seem to want to talk about. Now, the congressman has sent off a letter to Anthony Blinken, specifically asking and demanding answers, of course. And so we are waiting to hear back from him. But joining us now is Congressman Tim Burchett, and he joins us now. Great state of Tennessee. Sir, thank you for joining me. I'm very happy that you put this letter together and that you've exposed this because time and time again, we continue to hear about how individuals with ties to the Taliban, with ties to the ISIS, are somehow getting into the United States. So this person was literally brought into the country, flown in, and you're saying that he has ties to the Taliban. He's been training with them. He's got all these videos up on YouTube. What are you learning?
Well, it's not just ties that he has. He is at the highest levels of the Taliban. He's meeting with these people. He's videoing these areas that only there's a select few that are allowed into their little cabal, I guess you would say, because for security reasons, obviously, and they don't know if these people have been vetted. Well, they vetted this guy, and he's in with them, and now he's in America, and the last reported location was in North Carolina, as if they've had enough already. But the reason you ask, why would he be in North Carolina? Well, apparently we've sent a lot of our refugees there, folks that were loyal to America, and we got out before the fall and what have you, and their families were getting murdered and worse than that, even, if you can imagine. And that's where this guy was last reported being seen. So in my mind, he's just telling them where they are, and he's plotting more bad things. And yet our country gave him a visa to where he can just walk around the country just like any other citizen. And Brianna,
Yeah, and
that is very scary to me.
It's very scary to all of us. And I don't understand how the rest of those in the federal government, working in the federal government, don't understand this, because obviously he's a national security threat and you don't let these people in. And the Taliban's already laughing at Biden and Harris after their whole debacle when they left. It was an absolute embarrassment to this country. And the losses just continue to come. And it's just really upsetting that this is going on right now. And no one's really talking about it. Are you concerned that not only just Biden and Harris themselves are kind of avoiding these serious questions, but other individuals within their administration are just dodging it because they just don't think that they have to answer to the American people when it comes to letting in terrorists, letting in convicted murderers and rapists into our country? They just seem to dodge all these questions.
I think there's a level of corruption, and you made some very excellent points, and I should have been writing them all down. But I think there's a level of corruption involved here. I think that in the liberal mindset that everybody's good if they're given the opportunity. And no, these are just bad people, and they are bad people. America is not a petri dish. It's not an experimentation. We know what works. We know what does not work. When we let bad people into our country, bad things happen. You do not dilute bad things. You just make them worse. And now you've got a absentee president, at least in his mind, is an absentee president. You have a vice president who's clueless about anything international, and is really just a puppet for these anarchists that really want to destroy this country. And I can't say this enough, but they hate everything about us. That flag behind me is a 48-star flag. It was on my uncle's casket. He died fighting the Nazis. My mama's oldest brother, she flew an airplane during the Second World War while my dad was off fighting the Japanese. And I think of the incredible sacrifices that those people made just so we can throw it all away. These enemies, that people that we used to have to go to destroy overseas, are now in our malls, in our shopping centers, in our communities, and we better start paying attention. 14 million people came over this border, and they've criticized Trump and they've criticized the Republican Party because we voted down a terrible, terrible immigration policy. And that, I did the math on it today. It would have let in over 1,800,000 people a year under their system, and they would have been here under their premise legally, maybe not morally or ethically, but under the law they would have been here. And these are the kind of people we want to run our country. And ma'am, it just does not work. We got over 100,000 Chinese, communist Chinese, and where in the world are those 300,000 children? That's what really keeps me awake at night. So we've got a lot of questions, and I think the one answer is Election Day. If we don't get out and vote, we're going to throw the whole thing away.
No, 100%. That's what's so infuriating about it. And the missing children we covered on this show, but the mainstream media seems to miss that. And unfortunately, when it was President Trump and they were trying to convince the American people that he had lost a couple of hundred children, and they were trying to just deceive the public at this point, they had no problem covering it then. But now we're talking thousands and thousands of children who have gone missing, likely cheap labor, slavery. Honestly, at this point, that's what we could kind of refer to it as, what they're possibly being used for in sex trafficking. They don't want to talk about it. And that's going to be a black eye on American history when these things do come out and they can no longer deny it. And that's what's so concerning. But speaking of denying, this is infuriating, but Alejandro Mayorkas, the DHS secretary, is refusing to answer basic questions. There was an individual who was arrested earlier this week. He also is an Afghan so-called refugee who was brought into the country. And we're not really understanding how he was brought in because the federal government seems to not understand how he was brought in. We're getting mixed messages. And I'm going to just assume it's intentional at this point because I just can't understand how they would know this. But the individual was looking to carry out an ISIS-style terror attack on Election Day. Now, this individual, according to NBC News, worked for the CIA in Afghanistan. He was a security guard. And when Mayorkas was asked about this just yesterday, he really didn't want to answer the direct question that he was asked by the reporter. Take a listen.
This Afghan national who was working for the CIA in Afghanistan was arrested for planning an Election Day terror plot. He was brought to the U.S. after Afghanistan collapsed. Your agency says as part of the SIV program. The State Department is telling us he was not part of the SIV program, which had strenuous vetting. They say he was never issued an SIV or immigrant visa, and DHS paroled him into the U.S. They further expect the court document to be updated to reflect this from the DOJ side. So, Mr. Secretary, how was this man brought into the U.S.? What screening did he undergo? What did he apply for to get here?
Jackie, I'm here in North Carolina communicating with the individuals who are still conducting search and rescue operations. Over 200 people have lost their lives in Hurricane Helene. We have reports that at least 10 individuals have lost their lives as a result of Hurricane Milton. I'd be very pleased to answer your question in a different setting, but we are here to talk about emergencies and the support that we can deliver to people in desperate need. Thank you.
I appreciate that, Mr. Secretary, but we're getting conflicting answers from your agency and from the State Department about a man who was arrested for an election day terror plot. How do you not have those answers prepared?
Jackie, that's not what I said. What I said is I'd be pleased to discuss this issue at a different time.
Yeah, he doesn't want to answer the questions. And it's not the first time. I've reached out actually to the FBI and DOJ to follow up on another story about another group of Afghans that were brought in after that failed departure from Afghanistan. And it was related to one of our service members who claimed that she was assaulted by these group of Afghans that were on and brought on to a military base. And they were so-called vetted as well, of course. They don't want to answer my questions either or even give me an update on the investigation that was launched in 2021, whether there was charges filed on these individuals or not. What's going on here? Why are they sitting here and refusing to answer these simple questions?
They're just punching the clock. They know their time's running out, and they're hoping that Kamala Harris is elected president of the United States. And the one thing he didn't say was he spent a total of 6 hours in New York, and he had to get back to Washington for a sushi dinner that he was having at some posh Washington, D.C. restaurant. You know, this is the tone deafness of this group. They do not care. They are arrogant. It doesn't matter. It's like the president saying, well, you know, I'm at the beach. I'm not going to answer any questions. That's ridiculous. Answer the dadgum question. If you don't know the answer, that's the best answer you can ever. I don't know, but I'll get back to you. I'm going to find out. Instead of this flippant thing, all they're doing is delaying, deferring. They want to get it out. You know, they know that they'll move on to the next train wreck, which is definitely coming down the pike. And to think that he's not concerned, he started talking about 200 dead. Well, I'll tell you what, they let off a dirty bomb in New York City or some crowded metropolitan area, we're going to have more than 200 deaths. And we better start paying attention to what's going on. And I'll tell you who else is paying very much attention is the Chinese. They're watching our responses to these things. They're watching the weakness of our government, and they will play upon that. It's a guaranteed fact.
Yeah, and that's what's so enraging about all of this, because we're watching our open border just get flooded with Chinese men of fighting age and all of these individuals coming from countries that literally just hate us. And for some reason, DHS, Biden-Harris, they continue to pretend like everything's okay. These are people searching for the American dream when most Americans know what's going on. And we hope that those Americans do take it out on them during these upcoming elections, because we're just days away and we need to save this country. I want to thank you, Congressman, for speaking out on all of these important issues and being the one to ask these questions, especially to Anthony Blinken, because accountability needs to take place and they need to answer for why they're putting the American people at risk of a massive terrorist attack. So thank you so much, Congressman. We appreciate all that you do.
Brianna, thank you so much for putting the truth out there. People are listening. They're firing at us. The reason they're firing at us because we're over the dadgum target. So keep busting their butts. Thank you, ma'am.
That's all we do. Thank you so much. As many of you guys know, I'm an independent journalist, which means we don't have any corrupt corporations or even foreign governments funding this program. The funding for the show comes strictly from you all at home. So if you're looking to keep this show up and running, we would love your support. Head on over to supportbre.com. That's supportbre.com. That's where you can make a one-time donation or become a monthly donor, and you get to pick that dollar amount. So head on over right now to supportbre.com. make either a one-time donation or a monthly donation. We greatly appreciate it, of course, when you do so. All right, we're just a few days away from a major presidential election, and obviously early voting is about to start in several different states. So there's a lot that we're questioning here. We've been doing it all week in regards to how do we make sure people who are not U.S. citizens aren't voting? Well, in Texas, things are getting kind of confusing. The Secretary of State in Texas initially was kind of putting out wrong messages, and now she's asking for clarification from AG Ken Paxton, specifically asking about those who have driver's licenses, but they're non-U.S. citizen. They're here, and it's clearly marked that they're a temporary visitor or limited term is on those IDs. So what's really going on in Texas, and will this be a major threat as we're, preparing for a major presidential election? Joining me to discuss is Texas Scorecards, Brandon Walton's joining me now. He just put out a great piece available right now on texasscorecard.com. Brandon, thank you for joining me. You just did a great piece, like I mentioned, on Texas Scorecard that details all of this. So walk us through the very latest.
Yeah, so this started earlier this week when Secretary of State Jane Nelson, who in Texas, it differs state by state, but Secretary of State in Texas is in charge of the elections, but they're also an appointed figure. So we don't have elections for Secretary of State. Instead, they're appointed by the governor. The state Senate approves them. And she's been in there now for about a year and a half or so as the Secretary of State. She put out an advisory this week saying, on one hand, because there were questions and there were concerns about this, saying on one hand, non-citizen driver's licenses, these are driver's licenses that we give to people who are not citizens, but they're here otherwise legally. They might be here on a green card, etc. Those driver's licenses by themselves are not legal ID to cast a ballot to vote, which of course makes sense. On the same advisory, however, they said, but poll workers need to, if they say that they're a citizen and they show you that, well, then you need to give them a ballot and you need to let them cast a vote. This is absolutely maddening. And it's in complete contrast to the Secretary of State's office own advisory from just a few years ago that very explicitly said, no, if you're a citizen, you can't use this as proof of citizenship. It literally says on there, not a citizen, right? So you need to show an updated driver's license, or, if you haven't, maybe you were just naturalized, you haven't gotten that yet. You need to at least show a passport or your naturalization papers, etc. This has really thrown people into a tailspin because actually it was Representative Chip Roy last night reported that DPS, Department of Public Safety here in Texas, had told his office that there are about 2.8 million of these non-citizen driver's licenses and IDs. Again, I want to be very, very clear to say Texas doesn't, as a practice or under the law, give driver's licenses or IDs to illegal aliens, although I'm sure it probably happens to some extent. But we do give driver's licenses, right, to people who are here legally, but they're not citizens. That's who they're talking about. There's 2.8 million of those out there. And so this is now raising a lot of questions, a lot of attention being paid to the Secretary of State. The latest on this is that she has essentially kicked the question up to our Attorney General, Ken Paxton, who I expect in short order will probably offer some clarification on this, which would be clarifying, I would say, the obvious. I'm not a lawyer, but I would say it seems pretty clear to most people looking at this that no, a driver's license that says I'm not a citizen is not an ID to vote. You need to show something else. And hopefully this gets resolved because, look, we're so soon out from early voting here in Texas is just around the corner. Election day is less than a month away. Anything like this that erodes the confidence that we have in our elections in Texas or anywhere else in the country is ultimately going to be detrimental to the results that folks want to see happen in November.
Yeah, and when it comes to those who are looking to potentially commit election fraud in our elections, chaos is on their side. And so I'm deeply concerned with all of this. But we'll see how Attorney General Ken Paxton weighs in on this. I think, as always, he's on the right side of it. So we're looking forward to hearing from him. But speaking of that, Ken Paxton has been putting out quite the he's been putting out a lot of great stuff. And what I'm referring to is you posted this on your X page. Ken Paxton demands citizenship data for Biden-Harris administration to investigate potential non-citizen voters. Again, it seems like, and this was just a few days ago, that he's well aware of the threat of non-citizen voters, and he's looking to kind of gauge what this threat is. What do you think Ken Paxton is looking to do here by putting this press release out?
Well, essentially, there's a list of voters. It's about, I think it's between 500,000 to 1 million voters that the Secretary of State or the Texas Elections Office has as registered voters, but we don't have a driver's license or a state ID number tied to. Doesn't mean that they're non-citizens, doesn't mean that they're not eligible to vote, but the state's missing that information.
Mm-hmm.
Simple way to clear that up and is to have the federal government, you give those names to the federal government, they run it through their database, they can tell you, because they keep the records of who is a citizen and who's not. They're actually required to do that legally, and yet they have stonewalled, surprise, surprise, the Biden-Harris administration has stonewalled on verifying this information so that we can look at these voter rolls and get non-citizens who might potentially be registered illegally, get them off of the voter rolls. This is something that the Attorney General has been really ramping up over the last couple weeks. In fact, and another kind of a similar thing to the previous story, but you had the Secretary of State, Jay Nelson, asking the Biden administration for help, but doing it in a really soft way. And Attorney General Paxton said, okay, that's not enough. I'm going to essentially take over this. Give me the list of names and I'll take care of it. And that's what he's doing right now.
Yeah. Well, Ken Paxton is the one who I trust when it comes to getting to the bottom of all of this. So we look forward to seeing how this all pans out. Just a little nerve-wracking that it's happening this close to early voting starting and the actual election day. So we will be watching and we will be following everything that you are doing over at Texas Scorecard. Thank you so much, Brandon, as always, for joining me.
Thank you.
My favorite time of the show where I get to brag about the products that I do love so much, and they're all over at mypillow.com. You got to head over to mypillow.com right now because Mike Lindell has some incredible sales going on. He's got literally some of his best selling pillows on sale for less than $15. Head over to mypillow.com, use promo code BREE, that's promo code BRE. That is going to save you the most money when you head over there, of course. And get ready because Christmas is coming up, folks. Don't wait till last minute. Head on over, shop around a little bit, stock up. These are some of the lowest prices I've seen thus far. So make sure when you do so, you use that promo code BRE, that's promo code BRE to save. So what's really happening in North Carolina? Well, many of us have been asking that question for quite some time. I've been talking to sources on the ground, but we've got no better source than Miss Ann Vandersteel, who is right now in Western North Carolina, and she joins us now with the very latest.
Hey, Brianna, it's Ann. I'm with Operation Burning Edge, embedded with the Remnant Ministry of Texas, led by Lieutenant Colonel Dr. Pete Chambers. And that's Joe you hear over in the background, letting you know that he's here. We have been on the ground here for a week, and the increase in efficiencies of the operation, of the civilian-led operation down here is unbelievable. Just to kind of give you a little walk and talk, behind me, directly behind me in that white building is actually a MASH unit. That is a medical facility that is headed up by Dr. Molly James, a very prominent figure in the medical freedom movement. She's got an incredible team of doctors and nurses back there. They've set up stations that include IVs, all kinds of treatments they can put together, which is absolutely necessary as people are now starting to come down from the mountains. The folks here in Appalachia are extremely proud. And the last thing these people want is to take help from a stranger or to take help from anybody except their fellow neighbor. And frankly, a lot of people were so severely impacted, it was difficult for them to even come down from the mountains. But they've managed to make their way here, and they're getting medical care right now. But I want to just show you this hangar, because this hangar behind me was virtually empty the day we got here. Today, it has an overflow of supplies, generators, diapers, food, clothing. It's all coming in and it's all coming together, and it's quite remarkable. This is the power and a testament to the people that want to help people. Again, this is not FEMA showing up here. This is not some government-led operation. These are civilians that are coming together in various organizations, all private, all privately funded, delivering the necessary supplies, and then creating the distribution hub and spoke to actually get all this out to the people in far-reaching places and add medical services to the people that can make their way here. They're doing welfare checks, which is what we're going to be doing later on today. We're going up into the mountains to check on a migrant community. There's about 600 up there. A couple of them showed up here in the tent, and they're going to be our guides. But we're going to be providing that services as well. Doc, as a medic, as you know, flight surgeon, Green Beret, 39 years in the U.S. Army, is going to be joining us. So really just so excited to be down here. I have to tell you, I've never been more encouraged by the spirit and resilience of America as I am right here, right now in North Carolina. And to all of you back home in Florida, I send you my love and prayers, because I know you too have been challenged under Hurricane Milton, most specifically on the East Coast with respect to all those tornadoes. But again, I know you're resilient, and if the good people here in North Carolina can do it, I know my fellow Floridians can too.
I wasn't lying to you when I told you we were going to have a jam-packed program for you. I hope you enjoyed, of course. There was so much to talk about tonight. But listen, I'm not going to be in my chair next week, but I'm still going to be doing a show. It's going to be over on OAN. I'll be filling in for Mr. Dan Ball at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. You can catch me over there Tuesday through Friday of next week, of course. So make sure you join in. They are available on, obviously, the OAN website as well as Rumble. So give them a follow, subscribe if you're not subscribing just yet. And I'll catch you over there. But until then, have a great weekend, and thank you for joining me.